4 kelompok besar, yaitu bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru terbarukan, konservasi energi, serta manajemen. Bidang ketenaga listrikan terdapat beberapa diklat unggulan yang mencakup diklat teknis inspektur ketenaga listrikan, yaitu diklat teknis perencanaan ketenaga listrikan, diklat teknis perizinan ketenaga listrikan, diklat teknis uji layak instalasi listrik, diklat teknis perhitungan tarif listrik, diklat teknis pengembangan listrik perdesaan, diklat teknis pengelolaan dan pemantauan lingkungan bidang ketenaga listrikan, dan diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTMH. Di bidang energi baru terbarukan, dikembangkan beberapa diklat teknis, di antaranya diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTS, diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTB, diklat teknis pengelolaan biogas, serta diklat teknis lelang wilayah kerja pertambangan panas bumi. Sementara untuk bidang konservasi energi, diliputi diklat teknis kiat-kiat konservasi energi, diklat teknis audit energi, diklat teknis manajer energi, diklat teknis penghematan energi dan air, diklat teknis adaptasi dan mitigasi gas rumah kaca, dan diklat teknis perencanaan energi. Dengan itu semua, saat ini PPSDM KE-BTKE mempersiapkan sebuah wilayah yang akan dijadikan sebuah kampus besar diklat tersendiri di daerah Cisarua, Jawa Barat, yang akan didirikannya sebuah fasilitas lengkap untuk memenuhi kebutuhan para pengajar dan peserta didik. Kampus Desa Kuta dan Kampus Desa Cisarua merupakan sebuah bentuk keseriusan PPSDM KE-BTKE untuk terus menciptakan sumber daya manusia yang berkompeten, profesional, dan berdaya saing tinggi di setiap bidangnya.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hari ini saya mengunjungi beberapa fasilitas PPSDM, khususnya yang ada di Satker PPSDM KE-BTKE yang berada di Cisarua dan di Megamendung. Kita melihat nih di belakang kita, ini beberapa fasilitas yang harusnya nanti muncul di sini, beberapa pelatihan-pelatihan yang kita bisa manfaatkan berdasarkan lokasi yang ada di sekitar sini. Jadi kita berharap kita semuanya bisa memanfaatkan, terutama terkait dengan pelayanan untuk masyarakat. Saya sangat mendukung pengembangan PPSDM KE-BTKE untuk memanfaatkan aset-aset yang ada guna perkembangan institusi ini supaya lebih maju lagi ke depannya. Terima kasih. Jaya selalu PPSDM KE-BTKE.
Pengembangan sumber daya manusia adalah proses pelatihan pengetahuan dan sertifikasi sumber daya manusia. Maka dari itu, PPSDM KE-BTKE hadir dalam sebuah lembaga yang memfasilitasi sumber daya manusia yang baru. Kami siap menciptakan sumber daya manusia yang cepat, cermat, dan produktif.
Dunia terus berubah dan juga beriringan dengan semua kebutuhan di dalamnya. Di dalam kehidupan manusia sehari-hari, sumber energi menjadikan hal yang utama bagi keberlangsungan hidup manusia hingga diperlukannya sumber energi terbarukan. PPSDM KEBTKE hadir untuk memenuhi semua tantangan-tantangan yang ada di masa sekarang ini. Di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru dan terbarukan, serta konservasinya agar bidang KEBTKE dapat dikelola secara baik. Mengelola sumber daya manusia di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru terbarukan menjadi fokus utama bagi PPSDM KEBTKE untuk menjadikannya SDM yang berkompeten, profesional, berdaya saing, dan juga bermoral dalam lingkungan global di bidang ketenaga listrikan atau energi baru terbarukan dan konservasi energi. Dengan program-program unggulan yang diterapkan PPSDM KEBTKE dan juga didukung oleh para pegawai yang profesional dan berdedikasi tinggi. Demi melengkapi kesempurnaan pembentukan sumber daya manusia di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru dan terbarukan. Demi menciptakan dan membentuk SDM yang kompeten, profesional, dan berdaya saing tinggi, PPSDM KEBTKE memfasilitasi seluruh peserta didik dengan sarana dan prasarana yang sudah memiliki standar ISO. Laboratorium dan workshop menjadi fokus sarana dan prasarana di wilayah Pusdikat KEBTKE.
PPSDM KEBTKE, Kementerian Energi dan Sumber Daya Mineral, telah bertransformasi menjadi sebuah lembaga pengembangan SDM di bidang ketenaga listrikan dan EBTKE yang unggul dan selalu menjaga kualitas layanannya. PPSDM KEBTKE mendukung target nasional Net Zero Emission 2060 melalui transisi energi yang harus diwujudkan oleh semua pihak untuk mengurangi dampak perubahan iklim bagi kehidupan masyarakat. Selain itu, Indonesia memiliki energi baru terbarukan dengan potensi yang tinggi, mulai dari matahari, hidro atau air, angin, bioenergi, panas bumi, serta lautan. Hal inilah yang membuat kami semakin matang dan siap melayani Anda. Kami didukung oleh para fasilitator yang berkompeten dan fasilitas yang lengkap sesuai dengan kebutuhan pelatihan, sertifikasi, bimbingan teknis, dan layanan penunjang lainnya. Pelatihan dan sertifikasi dilaksanakan dengan layanan yang prima. Bergabunglah bersama PPSDM KEBTKE.
Program diklat di dalamnya dibagi menjadi 4 kelompok besar, yaitu bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru terbarukan, konservasi energi, serta manajemen. Bidang ketenaga listrikan terdapat beberapa diklat unggulan yang mencakup diklat teknis inspektur ketenaga listrikan, diklat teknis perencanaan ketenaga listrikan, diklat teknis perizinan ketenaga listrikan, diklat teknis uji layak instalasi listrik, diklat teknis perhitungan tarif listrik, diklat teknis pengembangan listrik perdesaan, diklat teknis pengelolaan dan pemantauan lingkungan bidang ketenaga listrikan, dan diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTMH. Di bidang energi baru terbarukan, dikembangkan beberapa diklat teknis, di antaranya diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTS, diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTB, diklat teknis pengelolaan biogas, serta diklat teknis lelang wilayah kerja pertambangan panas bumi. Sementara untuk bidang konservasi energi, Diikuti diklat teknis kiat-kiat konservasi energi, diklat teknis audit energi, diklat teknis manajer energi, diklat teknis penghematan energi dan air, diklat teknis adaptasi dan mitigasi gas rumah kaca, dan diklat teknis perencanaan energi. Dengan itu semua, saat ini PPSDM KEBTKE mempersiapkan sebuah wilayah yang akan dijadikan sebuah kampus besar diklat tersendiri di daerah Cisarua, Jawa Barat, yang akan didirikannya sebuah fasilitas lengkap untuk memenuhi kebutuhan para pengajar dan peserta didik. Kampus Desa Kuta dan Kampus Desa Cisarua merupakan sebuah bentuk keseriusan PPSDM KEBTKE untuk terus menciptakan sumber daya manusia yang berkompeten, profesional, dan berdaya saing tinggi di setiap bidangnya.
Baik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hari ini saya mengunjungi beberapa fasilitas PPSDM, khususnya yang ada di Satker PPSDM KEBTKE yang berada di Cisarua dan di Megamendung. Kita melihat nih di belakang kita, ini beberapa fasilitas yang harusnya nanti muncul di sini, beberapa pelatihan-pelatihan yang kita bisa manfaatkan berdasarkan lokasi yang ada di sekitar sini. Jadi kita berharap kita semuanya bisa memanfaatkan, terutama terkait dengan pelayanan untuk masyarakat. Saya sangat mendukung pengembangan PPSDM KEBTKE untuk memanfaatkan aset-aset yang ada guna perkembangan institusi ini supaya lebih maju lagi ke depannya. Terima kasih. Jaya selalu PPSDM KEBTKE.
Pengembangan sumber daya manusia adalah proses pelatihan pengetahuan dan sertifikasi sumber daya manusia. Maka dari itu, PPSDM KEBTKE hadir dalam sebuah lembaga yang memfasilitasi sumber daya manusia yang baru. Kami siap menciptakan sumber daya manusia yang cepat, cermat, dan produktif.
Kalau kita bayangi di beberapa tahun ke depan ini, kita akan melihat bahwa banyak sekali yang kita butuhkan. Untuk yang dibutuhkan sekarang saja sudah kekurangan sekali. Jadi harus benar-benar bagaimana kita menyiapkan diri untuk perkembangan yang akan datang di masa depan.
Masih itu sangat seru dan instrukturnya itu juga baik-baik dan mereka sangat keren-keren dan pengalaman mereka itu luar biasa. Nanti di akhir kan bakalan dapatin sertifikat dan itu sangat berguna banget buat kalian untuk melanjutkan jenjang karir kalian ke yang lebih tinggi lagi. Dan untuk cewek-cewek jangan merasa takut untuk mengikuti Ayo kita lihat, kalian pasti bisa. Halo, perkenalkan nama saya Kopi Arkadi dan rekan saya
Agus.
Jadi kami merupakan mahasiswa dari D4 spesialisasi energi baru terbarukan. Di program studi ini kita mempelajari terkait dengan energi baru terbarukan, khususnya PS dan PLN-nya.
Nah, di sini kami tidak hanya melakukan teori, tapi ada juga praktek, dan praktek yang kita telah lakukan di sini adalah terkait perencanaan PLTS dan PLTMH, kemudian perawatan PLTS dan PLTMH, dan ada juga kontrol terkait SCADA.
Nah, jadi teman-teman gak usah ragu lagi untuk join bersama kami di program studi ini, karena tentunya prospek ke depan sangat bagus sekali ya Gus ya.
Iya, benar banget Kopi.
Energi terbarukan.
Dunia terus berubah dan juga beriringan dengan semua kebutuhan di dalamnya. Di dalam kehidupan manusia sehari-hari, sumber energi menjadikan hal yang utama bagi keberlangsungan hidup manusia hingga diperlukannya sumber energi terbarukan. PPSDM KEBTKE hadir untuk memenuhi semua tantangan-tantangan yang ada di masa sekarang ini. Di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru dan terbarukan, serta konservasinya agar bidang KEBTKE dapat dikelola secara baik. Mengelola sumber daya manusia di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru terbarukan menjadi fokus utama bagi PPSDM KEBTKE untuk menjadikannya SDM yang berkompeten, profesional, berdaya saing, dan juga bermoral dalam lingkungan global di bidang ketenaga listrikan atau energi baru terbarukan dan konservasi energi. Dengan program-program unggulan yang diterapkan PPSDM KEBTKE dan juga didukung oleh para pegawai yang profesional dan berdedikasi tinggi. Demi melengkapi kesempurnaan pembentukan sumber daya manusia di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru dan terbarukan. Demi menciptakan dan membentuk SDM yang kompeten, profesional, dan berdaya saing tinggi, PPSDM KEBTKE memfasilitasi seluruh peserta didik dengan sarana dan prasarana yang sudah memiliki standar ISO. Laboratorium dan workshop menjadi fokus sarana dan prasarana di wilayah Pusdiklat KEBTKE.
PPSDM KEBTKE, Kementerian Energi dan Sumber Daya Mineral, telah bertransformasi menjadi sebuah lembaga pengembangan SDM di bidang ketenagalistrikan dan EBTKE yang unggul dan selalu menjaga kualitas layanannya. PPSDM KEBTKE mendukung target nasional Net Zero Emission 2060 melalui transisi energi yang harus diwujudkan oleh semua pihak untuk mengurangi dampak perubahan iklim bagi kehidupan masyarakat. Selain itu, Indonesia memiliki energi baru terbarukan dengan potensi yang tinggi, mulai dari matahari, hidro atau air, angin, bioenergi, panas bumi, serta lautan. Hal inilah yang membuat kami semakin matang dan siap melayani Anda. Kami didukung oleh para fasilitator yang berkompeten dan fasilitas yang lengkap sesuai dengan kebutuhan pelatihan, sertifikasi, bimbingan teknis, dan layanan penunjang lainnya. Pelatihan dan sertifikasi dilaksanakan dengan layanan yang prima. Bergabunglah bersama PPSDM KEBT-KE.
Program diklat di dalamnya dibagi menjadi 4 kelompok besar, yaitu
Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, selamat tahun baru, salam jumpa semuanya. Apa kabarnya? Bersama kita sudah ada 268 peserta webinar dan pasti akan naik terus ya. Selamat siang, Bapak Kepala PPSDM KEBTKE, Bapak Susetyo Edi Prabowo. Apa kabarnya, Pak?
Selamat siang, Bu Endah. Selamat siang, Bapak Ibu semua.
Selamat
Baik, Mbak.
siang. Baik, Alhamdulillah. Selamat siang, Bu Dian. Bagaimana kabarnya, Bu Dian?
Selamat siang, Bu Enda. Selamat siang, Pak Edi.
Selamat siang, Bu Dian.
Kabar baik, Mbak.
Baik.
Semoga baik juga ya, Mbak.
Alhamdulillah. Baik. Baiklah, ini kita sudah ditunggu hampir 300-an orang untuk segera memulai kayaknya. Ayo mulai gitu. Baik, pagi ini Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya dan salam kebajikan. Yang kami hormati Bapak Kepala Badan Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia, Energi dan Sumber Daya Mineral, yang dalam hal ini diwakili oleh Bapak Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia, Ketenagalistrikan, Energi Baru Terbarukan dan Konservasi Energi, Bapak Susetyo Edi Prabowo, Sekretaris BPSDM SDM atau yang mewakili, yang kami hormati juga Koordinator Penyelenggaraan dan Sarana Prasarana Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia Ibu Elin Lindiasari atau yang mewakili. Baik. Baik para direktur, kepala balai, pejabat pimpinan tinggi pratama di lingkungan Kementerian SDM, juga selaku narasumber siang hari ini, pagi hari dari tempat beliau, Bapak Joe Costa, Executive Director Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. Kemudian ada moderator kita hari ini, Ibu Dian Elvira Rosa, RISD Deputy Team Leader dan Manajemen Komponen 3, Komunikasi dan Informasi. Halo, selamat siang. Joe, can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear
Halo.
you. Hope you can hear me well as well.
Nice. Ya, crystal clear. Oke, dan para peserta webinar, para koordinator, subkoordinator, para pejabat fungsional PPSDM KBTKE, selamat siang Bapak Ibu, Mas Mbak, Sobat Energi semua yang saya hormati dan banggakan. Perkenalkan, saya adalah Enda Heliana, Pranata Humas PPSDM KBTKE yang akan menjadi MC pada webinar di siang hari ini. Sebelum berlanjut, kami menginformasikan bahwa tersedia bantuan interpreter atau penerjemah bagi peserta webinar. Cukup klik saja di ikon globe di kanan bawah pada aplikasi Zoom Anda. Coba dicari, di kanan ada icon globe. Nah, itu tinggal diklik, lalu pilih bahasa yang diinginkan, bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris. Simultaneous interpretation is provided throughout the webinar. Please click on the globe icon on the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred language. Nah, pada 24 Januari hari ini, 24 Januari 2024, Pusat Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia, Ketenagalistrikan, Energi Baru Terbarukan, dan Konservasi Energi menyelenggarakan webinar dengan mengangkat tema Hydropower Sustainability Standard, Global Standard for Positive Impact, Webinar hari ini terselenggara atas kerjasama PPSDM KIBTKE dan Proyek Renewable Energy Skills Development RISD. Nah, proyek RISD ini merupakan kemitraan antara pemerintah Indonesia melalui BPSDM ESDM dan pemerintah Swiss melalui State Secretariat for Economic Affairs atau SECO. Nah, Bapak Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, saatnya kita dengarkan sambutan dari Kepala Badan Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia, Energi, dan Sumber Daya Mineral, yang dalam hal ini akan diwakili oleh Kepala PPSDM KIBTKI yang akan sekaligus membuka webinar di siang hari ini. Kepada Bapak Susetyo Edi Prabowo, waktu dan tempat kami persilakan.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Endah. Sebelumnya pada kesempatan ini kami sampaikan permohonan maaf dari Bapak Kepala Badan, Bapak Prahoro Nur Cahyo yang berhalangan hadir karena ada tugas lain. Untuk selanjutnya, izinkan saya membacakan sambutan beliau. Yang saya hormati Mr. Joao Costa, Executive Director Hydropower Sustainability Alliance, selaku narasumber. Thank you, Mr. Joao Costa. Yang saya hormati para panelis yang terdiri dari pimpinan tinggi Pratama, pejabat administrasi dan fungsional di lingkungan Kementerian ESDM, dan undangan. Yang saya hormati moderator webinar, Ibu Dian Elvira Rosa, RESD Komponen 3 Manager. Yang saya hormati para peserta webinar pertama tahun 2024 PPSDM KIBTKE yang mengikuti kegiatan ini baik melalui akun Zoom, YouTube, dan sosial media PPSDM KIBTKE yang berbahagia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Puji dan syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan yang Maha Esa. Atas berkah dan karunia-Nya kita dapat hadir pada hari ini, Rabu 24 Januari 2024, dalam keadaan sehat walafiat untuk mengikuti webinar yang sangat penting ini, guna menambah wawasan dan pengetahuan serta informasi terkait ketenaga listrikan, energi baru terbarukan, dan konservasi energi. Bapak Ibu para panelis dan peserta yang kami hormati, alhamdulillah kita patut bersyukur bersama bahwa mengawali tahun ini kita dapat dipertemukan kembali dalam acara webinar PPSDM KIBTKE pertama di tahun 2024. Dengan mengangkat topik Hydropower Sustainability Standard, Global Standard for Positive Impact yang akan disampaikan oleh Mr. Joao Costa, Executive Director Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. Sebagai negara kepulauan, Indonesia menyimpan beragam sumber energi baru terbarukan. Diperkirakan potensi energi hijau di Indonesia mencapai 3.600 gigawatt, baik dari matahari, angin, panas bumi, arus laut, ombak, bioenergi, dan juga hydropower. Indonesia juga berkomitmen penuh mempercepat transisi energi melalui penambahan EBT dalam skala besar. Dalam World Hydropower Congress di Bali pada tahun 2023 yang lalu, Presiden Republik Indonesia menyampaikan bahwa kenaikan suhu bumi jika dibiarkan mencapai lebih dari 1,5 derajat Celcius, maka diprediksi akan menyebabkan krisis ekonomi yang berdampak pada 210 juta orang akan mengalami kekurangan air, 14% populasi akan terpapar gelombang panas, 290 juta rumah akan terendam banjir pesisir, dan 600 juta orang akan mengalami malnutrisi akibat gagal panen. Untuk itu diperlukan langkah untuk transisi menuju energi bersih harus segera dilakukan untuk mendukung kehidupan manusia yang lebih baik. Salah satu potensi energi besar yang bisa dimanfaatkan di Indonesia yaitu tenaga air. Potensi hidro tersebar di seluruh wilayah Indonesia, terutama di Kalimantan Utara, Aceh, Sumatera Barat, Sumatera Utara, dan Papua dengan potensi 95 gigawatt dan baru dimanfaatkan sebesar 6.738 megawatt. Selain itu, Indonesia memiliki lebih dari 4.400 sungai yang potensial dan 128 diantaranya sungai besar seperti Sungai Mamberamo di Papua dengan potensi 24.000 megawatt dan Sungai Kayan di Kalimantan Utara dengan potensi 13.000 megawatt. Hydropower merupakan potensi besar yang bisa dimanfaatkan untuk masa depan generasi penerus. Namun pengembangan hydropower masih menghadapi berbagai tantangan, antara lain terkait lokasi sumber hydropower yang posisinya jauh dari kebutuhan listrik, serta dalam pendanaan dan alih teknologi. Beberapa langkah yang dilakukan antara lain pemerintah Indonesia telah membuat blueprint percepatan jalur transisi yang menyambungkan listrik dari lokasi hydropower menuju pusat pertumbuhan ekonomi dan pusat pertumbuhan industri, sehingga nilai kemanfaatannya menjadi lebih tinggi. Bapak, Ibu panelis, dan peserta yang kami hormati, melalui teknologi dan dukungan yang dikembangkan, energi hidro telah lama dimanfaatkan di Indonesia. Misalnya PLTA Plengan di Bandung telah beroperasi lebih dari 100 tahun. Pemerintah telah secara serius mengembangkan potensi EBT di Indonesia. Pada RUPTL 2021 sampai dengan 2030, ditargetkan penambahan kapasitas PLTA sebesar 9.272 megawatt dan PLTM atau PLTMH sebesar 1.118 megawatt. Energi hidro juga dimanfaatkan sebagai PLT pump storage, yaitu metode penyimpanan dan produksi listrik dengan memindahkan air di antara dua reservoir yang berbeda ketinggian. Melalui webinar ini, Badan Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia Kementerian ESDM, dalam hal ini PPSDM KIBTKE, mengundang ahli dari Hydropower Sustainability Alliance untuk memberikan materi terkait hydropower. Adapun topik yang akan dibahas mencakup prinsip-prinsip energi hidro yang berkelanjutan, penerapan dan nilai bisnis, serta struktur, topik, dan persyaratan performa. Dalam webinar ini, narasumber juga akan memaparkan best practice di luar negeri dan penerapannya di Indonesia. Melalui pemaparan dan diskusi, diharapkan webinar kali ini dapat mendukung proses transisi energi Indonesia yang berkeadilan, serta dapat mencapai target net zero emission paling lambat pada tahun 2060. Bapak, Ibu, para panelis, dan peserta yang kami hormati, sebagai penutup, semoga kegiatan webinar ini terselenggara dengan baik. Tidak lupa saya menyampaikan ucapan terima kasih kepada pemerintah Swiss melalui Renewable Energy Skills Development atau RESD Project dan Hydropower Sustainability Alliance atas dukungannya dalam penyelenggaraan webinar kali ini. Terima kasih juga kepada narasumber kita, Mr. Joao Costa, panelis, dan peserta. Semoga Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan yang Maha Kuasa, memberikan petunjuk dan merahmati setiap langkah dan upaya kita. Dan dengan mengucapkan Bismillahirrohmanirrohim, kegiatan webinar PPSDM KIBTKE yang pertama di tahun 2024 ini, saya nyatakan dibuka secara resmi. Sekian dan terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang. Terima kasih pada Bapak Kapus yang telah mewakili Bapak Kaban yang telah secara resmi membuka penyelenggaraan webinar pada hari ini. Baiklah, Sobat PPSDM KBTKE, PPSDM KBTKE telah meluluskan lebih dari 20.000 alumni dan telah menerapkan pengetahuan dan kompetensi mereka di sektor KBTKE. PPSDM KBTKE memberikan pelayanan publik melalui pelatihan, sertifikasi, untuk aparatur, masyarakat umum, juga pengelola industri di sektor ketenagalistrikan, energi baru terbarukan, dan konservasi energi. Serta PPSDM KBTKE juga memberikan jasa konsultasi dan audit energi pada industri, bangunan gedung, kerjasama penyewaan dan penyelenggaraan aktivitas meeting, insentif, convention, dan exhibition. Lebih lengkapnya, Sobat bisa kunjungi website kami di ppsdm.esdm.go.id dan ikuti terus sosial media kami baik di Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, dan Twitter dengan akun @ppsdmkbtke. Sebelum berlanjut ke materi, saya mau mengumumkan kuis yang seru. Hari ini ada kuis seru berhadiah selama webinar berlangsung. Ada kuis penyegaran, nanti refreshment terkait pengetahuan kita soal hydropower. Jadi nggak ada stres-stresan, tapi kita di sini fun. Yang kedua adalah kuis hadiah untuk penanya terbaik. Para pemenang akan diumumkan di akhir acara dan di sosial media PPSDM KBTKE. Sebelum berlanjut, link materi dan sertifikat akan diberikan di akhir apabila peserta memberikan evaluasi di akhir seminar ini. Jadi ikuti terus dari awal sampai akhir. Bagi yang kelempar nih dari webinar nih yang sudah bersama kita hampir 480 orang, bisa join di YouTube PPSDM KBTKE dan Facebook PPSDM KBTKE. Baik, acara selanjutnya akan kami serahkan kepada moderator kita siang hari ini, Ibu Dian Elvira Rosa, RISD Deputy Team Leader dan Manajer Komunikasi dan Informasi. Mari beri tepuk tangan virtual yang meriah dari 480 hampir 500 orang ini untuk para narasumber dan moderator kita siang hari ini. Kepada Ibu Dian, waktu dan tempat kami persilakan. Silakan Bu Dian.
Terima kasih banyak Mbak Endah. Izin Pak Edi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang Sobat Energi, Bapak Ibu peserta webinar yang saya hormati, pejabat Kementerian SDM yang tidak dapat saya sebutkan satu persatu. Perkenalkan, saya Dian Elvira Rosa dan saya akan memandu acara kita pada siang hari ini. Seperti disebutkan Mbak Endah tadi ya, saat ini sudah lebih dari 500 peserta yang bergabung dari berbagai kota di Indonesia dan bahkan dari luar negeri. Semoga kita semua dalam keadaan sehat walafiat dan bersemangat untuk menyimak topik yang sangat menarik, yaitu hydropower atau tenaga air, khususnya tentang Hydropower Sustainability Standard, standar keberlanjutan tenaga hidro, sebagai standar global yang mendukung dampak positif terhadap sektor tenaga air. Sebagaimana disampaikan tadi dalam pembukaan Pak Edi, Indonesia memiliki sumber energi terbarukan berupa sumber air yang sangat berlimpah. Namun pemanfaatannya masih minim atau masih kurang ya, dan banyak tantangan yang dihadapi untuk mengembangkan sektor ini. Bukan saja dari sisi investasi dan alih teknologi, tetapi juga dari sisi potensi konflik sosial dan dampak jangka panjang pada ekosistem sungai di bagian hilir. Oleh karena itu, proses transisi energi bersih ini harus dilakukan dengan pertimbangan yang matang dan cermat, sehingga pembangunan sektor tenaga air di tanah air kita ini tetap bisa berjalan dalam jangka panjang secara baik, meskipun dalam cuaca kering maupun cuaca basah yang ekstrim. Nah, disinilah peran dari standar keberlanjutan dalam sektor tenaga hidro. Dan telah hadir bersama kita narasumber ahli dari Hydropower, Bapak João Costa, yang bergabung dari Portugal ya. Jadi sekarang di Portugal masih sangat pagi. Good morning, João. Very happy to have you with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Bapak João merupakan Direktur Eksekutif dari Hydropower Sustainability Alliance, yaitu suatu aliansi independen yang mulanya adalah bagian dari Asosiasi Hydropower Internasional. Pada bulan Oktober 2003 lalu ya di Bali dalam acara International Hydropower Congress, Hydropower Sustainability Alliance ini diumumkan atau diresmikan secara formal untuk berdiri sebagai organisasi yang independen. Keahlian Bapak Joao Costa adalah menjalin kerjasama tingkat tinggi ya dengan lembaga pembangunan internasional, LSM, pemerintah, dan sektor swasta untuk mengintegrasikan prinsip-prinsip keberlanjutan dalam sektor hydropower. Beliau memiliki gelar master dalam Engineering for Sustainable Development dari Universitas Cambridge di Inggris Raya dan Master of Science dalam Teknik Sipil dari Universitas Lisbon. Sebelum memasuki paparan presentasi, saya ingin mengingatkan bahwa presentasi akan disampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris, namun tersedia terjemahan simultan ke dalam bahasa Indonesia. Jadi Bapak Ibu silakan klik icon tombol dunia di bagian bawah kanan layar Zoom masing-masing dan pilih bahasa yang diinginkan. Dan selama paparan, Bapak Ibu, kami persilahkan untuk mengajukan pertanyaan secara tertulis ya di kolom di kolom Q&A. Nanti di akhir acara akan diumumkan 3 pertanyaan terbaik untuk mendapatkan hadiah seru dari panitia. Alright, we will now start the presentation. Joao, you can share your screen directly and operate your PowerPoint. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Diana. I hope you can hear me well and see the presentation now. You are right. We just launched recently, although this is a work that has spanned for more than 10 years now, more than almost 15 years now. But only since last year, we have a new alliance and that works on this new standard. And maybe by coincidence, but maybe by destiny, we launched in Indonesia, in Bali last year. So thank you so much for hosting you. And our stories are definitely connected and our links with Indonesia are very, very strong. So thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here today. Before I start, I'm also here with my colleague, Mariana. Mariana Empish is our engagement officer, will help us with the quiz and will present the quiz for us, the most fun part of our presentation today. You'll hear from her in a few moments. Are you there, Mariana?
I'm here. I don't know
Alright.
if you can see me, but I'm here.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much, Diane, and the team from RESD. You are fantastic in organizing this. All very easy for us. We just need to come here and speak. Thank you, Mr. Prabhu, for the nice words. It's very and very informative. I took a few notes and from your remarks around the potential of hydropower in Indonesia. It's incredible. It's an incredible country with incredible potential to develop hydropower. So many rivers, so many big rivers with potential in many, many places, and such a long history with more than 100 years of work in hydropower. So a lot has been done and a lot more is in front of us to do and to work together on making this sure that these resources, this hydropower potential is used in a responsible manner. And that's the best way to deal with the challenges of financing, of social acceptance, etc. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Thank you to all participants and thank you to the interpreters as well. I hope I'm not speaking too fast. If I am, just let me know and I'll speak slower. So let's kick this off. As already introduced, we are the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. The Alliance is really a multi-stakeholder body that includes not only the industry of hydropower, represented by the International Hydropower Association, but also a number of stakeholders that represent different perspectives on hydropower. And this is important for many reasons. So we have financiers like the World Bank, like the New Development Bank. We have financial mechanisms and financial initiatives like the Climate Bonds Initiative, which links our standard to climate bonds. We can talk a little bit about that. We have hydropower companies like EDP, like ZESCO, and others that represent the voice of industry, including Voigt as well as one of the largest providers and suppliers of turbines and other equipment. So big names in the industry. And we also have NGOs like WWF, like the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So bringing the NGO, bringing the civil society, academia perspective to the discussion and to the standard. And finally, we have country governments. We have representatives from Norway, from Switzerland, SECO, which who you all also know, and including from BAPANAS, we have representation. So it's good when we discuss the standard internally, when we manage the standard, we know that the voices of BAPANAS, of Indonesia, of some representation in Switzerland, so governments, banks, NGOs, and industry are discussing together how is this standard applied, what are the requirements, and how can it be accepted. And this is crucial, and this is why our standard is quite unique in the way it is seen around the world and around multiple stakeholders. It does not mean we don't have challenges to be accepted as a standard. Of course, that's part of the industry, and that's part of any industry these days, any renewable industry. So this is the core of our work, and this is who's behind our work. So me and our team, including Mariana and others, we are the managers of the standard within the Sustainability Alliance. Again, as Mr. Prabhu mentioned, the 1.5 degrees threshold is crucial, and we want to stay under it as much as we can. And even last year was the hottest year on record. It's incredible. It's unavoidable, the conversation. It's unavoidable, the evidence, to see the evidence around climate change and its impacts everywhere, but mostly in the poorer communities, in the least developed economies, in some islands, and all over the world, really. So it is really important, and it's for all of us here today. I believe that if you're here today listening to this, it's because you care about this topic. It's because you care about developing a world and transforming our world to adapt to this new reality, to adapt to climate change, to change into a low carbon future. And hydropower is part of that solution. It is the largest renewable electricity source in global electricity by far. So we cannot avoid it. It's here, and it's here to stay. You know, without hydropower, more than a billion people, almost 2 billion people, which were previously underserved in terms of electricity, gained access to electricity through hydro. And this number is increasing. You know, around 17% of all global electricity comes from hydropower. That's a big, big chunk. And you know, installed capacity is enormous, and it will continue to grow as we see from the studies of the International Energy Agency. So what we see here is coal, nuclear, solar, gas, hydro, and bioenergy, and other renewables. So what you see in 2020 in this scenario is the light blue there is hydropower. It's the largest, but you also see wind in green, and then solar in yellow, and others. Renewables that in 2020 were quite small relative to hydro and coal and gas. But if you look at 2030, you see them much bigger, and that's good. That's a good thing for the world. We'll have more renewables. We'll have more electricity generated without carbon emissions. We also see that hydropower will continue to grow at a slower pace, but still growing and still big part of the picture. In fact, it is crucial to have hydropower if we want to have other intermittent renewables. Why is that? Because hydropower is very broad, actually, in terms of the type of electricity services it provides. It's not just you know, when the wind is blowing, you have wind power. When the sun is shining, you have solar. But if none of those things are happening, you don't have electricity. you have to store it. Hydropower is slightly different. You have a number of energy capabilities that go from more broad, like, you have a reservoir, for example, so you can turn it on and off in seconds. So that's a black start capability, for example. If you have a pump storage project, then you can store energy. It can work like a water battery. In fact, 99% of the world's batteries today, capacity in terms of capacity, comes from pumped storage projects, which is also an interesting number. And there are a number of aspects that are more technical, but these are important topics that are not well known in the public, which is normal because they're very specific. But aspects like inertial response and voltage support, these are important matters that are not addressed by, for example, solar panels, the inertial response. And these are aspects that are crucial to maintain a stable electricity grid. So that's why hydropower is still important. You know what other services provide this type of electricity? Gas and coal. But obviously, if we need to take them off the mix, then we have to replace it with things like this, and hydropower is very, very well placed to do so. And beyond the electricity services, it can do a lot more. A hydropower project is it's a big project, it is impactful, and it has the potential to create a lot of benefits, from avoiding pollutants and emissions by replacing coal, for example, to recreation, flood and drought protection. So climate resilience aspect is very big in hydropower, and we're working on it as well. It's covered in our standard. Improved infrastructure and waterways, increasing navigability in some rivers. And these projects, especially the big hydropower projects, they bring in a lot of investment, and that investment should go to community investments in rural areas, boost to economic growth, boost to jobs, not only during construction, but also after construction. So these are the benefits that go beyond electricity, and hydropower projects should see them and should look into these as part of their investment. And that is crucial to start overcoming some of these challenges of acceptance, of financing, and making sure that hydropower brings all these cards to the solution when decisions about new projects are being made by governments, by regulators, and by investors. Okay, so what we see here is hydropower at a crossroad. We understand that it has a vital role, to play in this transition. If we look into a low carbon world, hydropower is crucial. It supports wind and solar deployment. It backs up all these intermittent and variable renewables, and also provides water services, electricity services, economic and community services for this more than just quick and transition, but a fair energy transition. But of course, irresponsible projects are no longer acceptable. And this is also unavoidable. Nobody wants to see the communities that should be served by their projects to be underserved, to be put aside. So if we don't include communities, if we don't manage not only the social aspects, but the environmental aspects, which will then have an impact in communities again, project developers will have to face protests, and rightly so, because people are not happy. So we need to understand that projects need to be responsible to deal with this with these issues early on, to involve the communities, and to make sure that these types of projects don't go ahead. Financiers don't like these projects. Governments don't like these projects. Hydropower developers, to be honest, I don't think nobody likes to be involved in projects that are not accepted. It's quite the opposite. But the fact is, this happened in the past. it's not, also to be fair, it's not exclusive to hydropower. It also happens in wind projects, and we see that more and more. It happens in solar projects. It happens in roads as well. So it happens in all types of infrastructure that have an impact in the environment, and hydropower certainly has. So we need to think about how to bring all these benefits that hydropower has and manage all the negative impacts to make sure that the projects actually bring up a net positive. Okay, so that was my introduction about hydropower. I think you can see where my next part of my presentation is going about the standard. But before we continue, let's test your knowledge. So, Mariana, the floor is yours to lead the next Slido quiz, and Deanne as well. Thank you for your help.
Sure. Thank you, João, and thank you everyone for having us. This is great. As João said, I will be sharing my screen in just a second to walk you through a little knowledge quiz. But as Enda said before, this is nothing to worry about. This is a very, relaxed environment. It's just to get an idea of your knowledge before we continue with the presentation. So if you can just give me one quick second, I will share the quiz. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. I will give people a few minutes to sign in. So the way to do that is to either with your phone, you can scan the QR code here, or you can, even on your desktop, you can go to slido.com and then if it asks you for a code, it's right here. It's 2077776. And you might be asked to put your name in so that we can then see the best participants who's performed the best. Hopefully this won't be too difficult. I know that we have 500 people on, so hopefully the site doesn't crash. If you're not able to respond, please feel free to add your answers in the chat. So let's get started.
Mariana, perhaps we wait 1 or 2 more minutes so that we have more people signed up to the Slido. Jadi Bapak Ibu, kita tunggu mungkin beberapa menit lagi ya sampai lebih banyak orang bergabung ya. Jadi nanti quiz-nya akan dilakukan dalam bahasa Indonesia. Is that correct, Mariana? The quiz will be in Indonesian?
No, so the quiz is in English, and again, you if you can read the questions in bahasa, if
right,
possible.
Okay. Ya, oke. Jadi nanti kuisnya dalam bahasa Inggris, tetapi nanti saya akan membacakan terjemahannya dalam bahasa Indonesia. Okay. All right, perhaps we can start.
Okay. All right, so I see that there's some people responding. I think we can just get going, and then some people will definitely catch up. So the primary environmental benefits of responsible hydropower, I think everybody has this answer correct. We are starting off easy. Starting with the basics, and then it'll get a little bit more challenging as we go on, as we advance with the quiz.
Ya. Jadi apa salah satu manfaat utama bagi lingkungan ya dari hydropower yang dilakukan secara bertanggung jawab atau secara responsible? Apakah pengurangan emisi karbon? Apakah tingkat polusi udara yang lebih tinggi? Apakah peningkatan erosi tanah? Atau meningkatnya kelangkaan air? Yang mana? Ya, yang mana yang merupakan manfaat utama? dari hydropower yang dilakukan secara responsible atau secara bertanggung jawab?
Naik turun ya Mbak Dian.
Oh, baik, baik. Baik.
Naik turun. Tadi paling banyak pengurangan emisi karbon, sekarang ada higher levels of air pollution ya.
Oke, suara saya udah normal ya?
Jelas Mbak.
Okay, okay. Perhaps we go to the next one then.
So
Do we
this
announce
is a bit of a
the
trick question.
right, right.
It's yeah, we have to read the questions very carefully, because if you see it, it says one of the environmental benefits of responsible hydropower. So the correct answer would be reduced carbon emissions, as most people have voted here.
Great.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay. There we go. We already have so many answers. This is great. Diane, do you want to go ahead and read
Yes.
it?
Oke, manakah dari berikut ini yang merupakan potensi dampak sosial dari proyek hydropower yang tidak direncanakan dengan baik? Yang tidak direncanakan dengan baik ya, dampak potensi sosialnya. Apakah displacement ya dari masyarakat lokal dan terganggunya mata pencaharian? Apakah peningkatan kesempatan pendidikan? Apakah penguatan ikatan komunitas lokal atau masyarakat lokal? Atau perlindungan warisan budaya? Jadi ini dampak sosialnya, potensi dampak sosial dari proyek hydropower yang tidak dilakukan dengan baik.
I think just like the previous question, most people are getting it right. So as we know, hydropower projects that are somewhat irresponsible or built without sustainability in mind and operated without sustainability as a priority can have several negative impacts on populations, and one of them is the involuntary displacement of local communities and disruption of livelihoods. It can negatively impact the cultural heritage of communities that are affected by the project. So the correct answer, as most of you know, is answer 1, option A, involuntary displacement.
Okay, good to know that a lot of people are answering correctly.
Yeah. Congratulations. Okay, let me move on to the next one. I don't want to take up too much of your time with this. So what are the other purposes, other services that hydropower can offer if done sustainably beyond electricity generation?
Jadi selain digunakan sebagai pembangkit listrik, apalagi manfaat hydropower apabila dilakukan secara berkelanjutan? Apakah suplai air untuk irigasi, carbon sequestration, pengendalian banjir, atau semuanya?
And again, I think most people have it right. It's all of the above. If done responsibly and sustainably, all of these benefits can come with hydropower beyond just providing electricity. So great job, everyone, again. Most of you answered correctly. And I see that we have 7 participants responding, so I think we can move on to the next one. Okay, let's see. How can hydropower contribute to a sustainable energy mix? Okay.
Nah, ini agak mulai ini ya, susah-susah gampang ya kayaknya. It's getting a bit more trickier. Jadi bagaimana hydropower dapat berkontribusi terhadap bauran energi berkelanjutan? Apakah dampak yang minimal terhadap lingkungan? Apakah melengkapi energi terbarukan yang bersifat intermiten sehingga tenaga surya seperti tenaga surya dan tenaga bayu, ketersediaan sumber daya yang tidak terbatas, atau biaya konstruksi awal yang rendah?
So I see that most people have answered A, which is the correct answer, as my colleague João Costa mentioned at the start of the presentation. Hydropower is a good way to complement variable renewable energy sources like wind and solar. We like to say that water always flows, but the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. So it's good to have a base load like hydropower. Okay. Tien, do you think I can move on to the next one?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Okay, now we do get more to the challenging questions. Which factor is crucial in determining the sustainability performance of a hydropower project?
Ya. Jadi faktor apa yang sangat penting dalam menentukan performa keberlanjutan ya, sustainability performance dari proyek hydropower? Apakah jumlah turbin yang dipasang? Apakah profitabilitas proyek? Atau tingkat keterlibatan masyarakat setempat? Atau pilihan D, integrasi analisis mendalam dari dampak terhadap lingkungan dan sosial? Menjadi faktor yang sangat menentukan dalam performa keberlanjutan dari proyek hydropower.
I think the answer is this is very good. See that 77% of people have answered correctly. The way to gauge and evaluate the sustainability performance of a project is to do a very rigorous environmental and social impact assessment. The economic profitability and viability of the project is not necessarily, it's definitely part of it, but it's not the whole of it. And the rest of these, the level of community engagement is very, very important, but it needs to be part of a wider social and environmental assessment. Okay, I think I will move on to the next one. I see that we only have 3 people or 8 now responding to this question. It's you're too fast. Everyone is too fast at answering. It's hard to keep up with that. Okay, all right. Now we have a little bit more balance. Which of the following best defines sustainability certification systems? This is, again, a little bit more difficult, and we see that the answers are a little bit more varied. But most people, 43%, have answered correctly. It is the formal evaluations assessing a company's commitment to ESG principles. The other ones are somewhat true and correct, but again, we need to think in the broader spectrum. We need to consider every ESG principle to be able to have a holistic evaluation and findings of the sustainability performance. Okay,
Good.
should we move on?
Yep.
Okay. Which of the following groups benefit from the hydropower sustainability standard? And I just want to tell everyone this will be covered in the rest of the presentation. It's just to get a baseline understanding of people's knowledge. And again, everybody is I mean, people are doing very well. It's all stakeholders. The standard, the hydropower sustainability standard, should not simply be used by hydropower developers. This is something, it's a tool that can be used by pretty much all stakeholders. Consumers are able to get the assurance that they need that that the electricity they are getting is responsibly generated. And financial institutions can use it as a guide to know which projects to finance. Governments can use it also to make sure that they abide by international agreements on climate change, for example. So the standard can be used by everyone in some sort of way. It's just that hydropower projects are the ones being evaluated. Okay. Very nice. Very good job, everyone. Okay, interesting. What potential negative impacts may arise from unreliable sustainability certification systems? It's important to note that not all certification systems are equal. Some of them are more rigorous, some are less. And again, the first answer, most people have it right. It can be a tool for greenwashing if the sustainability system is not rigorous enough. So it can be a way to just provide a sustainable label for companies, for manufacturers, producers, and if there's no rigorous evaluation and assessment process behind it, and a public consultation process where we can invite all stakeholders to comment, then it can very much be used as a way to cover up the unsustainable and more unethical practices behind a company's actions. So this doesn't only go for hydropower, it goes for everything. For the textile industry, the agricultural industries, all of that. So very good job. These also, the undermining consumer trust in genuine sustainability efforts is also correct. Good. Yes. So I see.
Which one is the answer again, Mariana? For this
there's multiple. I'm sorry. I thought this was going to say that there are multiple, but greenwashing is correct.
Okay.
Undermining consumer trust is also correct.
Yeah.
And incentivizing business to prioritize short-term profits over sustainability is also correct. So the top three here are correct. So great job, everyone. The two last ones are kind of the opposite of the answer. So the first top three are correct answers. So you can choose multiple.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Let's go to the next one then. Okay, now again, this will be covered more in the presentation, but let's see who can perform official assessments using the hydropower sustainability standard. Most people, again, have it absolutely right. It's independent assessors that are accredited by the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. This means that the assessors that evaluate projects are completely independent to the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance, but they are experts in the Hydropower Sustainability Standard. And those are the only ones that can conduct formal assessments. Hydropower developers and owners can definitely observe an assessment. They can also do an unofficial self-assessment of their project, but they cannot produce an assessment that would then be potentially lead to a hydropower sustainability standard certification. A lot of our assessors are hydropower engineer, but they need to have that accreditation to be able to do those the assessments. And I believe that most people at this webinar can also conduct assessments, but they would need to go through the formal training and different levels of accreditation to be able to do official assessments using our standard. So again, very well done, everyone. And we're almost there. So in promoting sustainable practices, which approach best aligns with the principles of environmental stewardship? Interesting. Okay. Okay. So this one is a trick is a trick question a little bit, I would say. So it is true, this answer that received the most votes, it is true that sustainability standards should be in a way implemented in all industries, because when we think about it, all industries have some sort of environmental and social footprint. The reality of it is that could lead, having an overwhelming amount of standards and certification systems, it could be hard to manage all these certifications. So right now, the correct answers is prioritize standards on industries where the impact is most significant and where there is most potential for positive change. That is where we are right now in the world of sustainability standards. In the future, ideally, we would have certifications and sort of mechanisms that would provide accountability to all the industries that have potential social and negative impacts on the planet and on people. But for now, we really need to focus on those industries that have the biggest impact. So, for example, if you think, the industries such as agriculture, like for example, soy production can have very big levels of deforestation. It's the same thing with cattle production. And textiles also. So those are usually the industries that you see that are sort of monitored by sustainability standards. But hopefully in the future, it will be all industries.
Great. That was
Okay.
a bit of a tricky one.
Yep. And there we go. That is the last question. So I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us in this quiz. Hopefully you found it interesting, and João will go through his presentation, and he will provide extra clarity on some of these questions. And of course, if you have any questions, please let us know, and we're always happy to answer them.
Can we find out the top 3 answers, the winners or the top scorers?
I will look at the
provide.
results in the back
Right.
end, and
Okay.
I will send them to you. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mariana.
No problem. It was my pleasure. I will stop sharing and
Great.
hand it over back to you, Diane.
Okay, thank you, Mariana. All right, and perhaps we can directly continue with João. Please go ahead. You're still muted, sorry.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. I think we're even more informed now, a little bit. At least the quiz, Mariana's quiz, made us think a little bit. Let's go through it. We left off here. Irresponsible projects are no longer acceptable. So what can we do? How can investors tell the good actors from the bad? How can communities, trust that they have a voice in a hydropower development? How can developers address this matter, this complex? They're not always easy to solve, this ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues. And how can governments be sure that hydropower contributes to scaling up renewables? I've seen a few questions already in the Q&A about what should Indonesia do. Solar PV, pump storage, conventional hydropower, where should we move? Well, we need to understand. We need standards. Mariana talked a little bit about it. Standards can be very good, reference points, can add credibility. And if they also bring transparency, then these can be really helpful to the industries, to the governments, to the communities. Important notes: standards are not perfect, right? Standards need to keep evolving. Standard needs to be open to criticism as well, and that's one of the important things about standards. Civil society, we consumers, when we see a Rainforest Alliance stamp, we know that something was done. differently from a banana, for example, that doesn't have a Rainforest Alliance stamp. And we can track that, and we can see what has been done, and we can criticize. We may say, hey, this is not enough, or this is good, but at least we know something about it, and we know that it's something positive or more positive. And that's important. So that's how we evolve together, and that's how, that's how criticism can be channeled to the right places, and that's how industries can also respond and evolve and improve with those criticisms. So even if they're not perfect, even if they don't symbolize that a project, a service, a product is perfect, they show what the product is. They show they're doing better. They show they're doing the best they can. So at this stage, but they also should show that they can improve, and they're open to that. So we recognize a few of these standards as citizens from the Fair Trade or the FSC, and now we have a standard for hydropower. This is the first standard in the ISEAL community. So ISEAL communities, all these standards, all these logos that you see here and more are part of the ISEAL Alliance community. Basically, these are the recognized and kind of certified sustainability standards. And we are the first for the energy sector, and we are at the standard for the hydropower sector. So we address the environmental, social, and governance issues with hydropower projects. Let's go into a little bit more detail. This is a kind of a high-level presentation, but and I won't go into the details of the topics, but at least some of the topics you should see. There are 12 topics in the standard, and I'll go through them. First, environmental and social assessment and management. This determines the kind of the ISO 14001 environmental managed systems. You look at the systems, you look at the environmental impact assessment and management measures that a project has in general terms. Labor and working conditions, number 2, it looks obviously into that, into the social aspects related to the workforce. Water quality and sediments, very evident what it refers to, and a big issue in hydropower, how to deal with sedimentation. It also includes erosion and the quality of water, upstream and downstream. Community impacts and infrastructure safety, it's under the same topic. So issues with community engagement, measures to address any type of social issues, disabled communities, but also infrastructure safety. Why are they together? Because the infrastructure safety is very much tied to the community safety and the community impacts. That's one of the reasons these two issues are merged into one topic. Another aspect, which we'll talk later, is this is also how the IFC performance standards and the World Bank safeguards organizes its topics. So the alignment with multilateral development banks and international performance standards was also important here. In fact, you've seen the World Bank logo as part of the governance of this standard, and that's why there is a link. So you'll start recognize that, especially if you already know the IFC performance standard and those types of environmental and social safeguards. Number 5, we have resettlement, about the physically displaced communities and how to deal with it. Then we have biodiversity and invasive species, from aquatic life to terrestrial life, all are addressed here. Indigenous peoples, there's a specific topic. It includes, for example, the free, prior, and informed consent of indigenous peoples. It's connected to the community impacts, naturally, and to the cultural heritage, which is the upcoming topic, but it's very specific, as the UN has its own declaration on the rights of indigenous peoples, and it's so specific, so important that it's its own topic. Cultural heritage, about the physical cultural heritage, temples, things related to any social aspect that has a physical aspect, physical cultural aspect that needs to be addressed by hydropower projects. Governance and procurement, important aspect, address issues like grievance mechanisms, corruption, communication and consultation, how are communities informed, how communities engage, not only communities, but any stakeholder. Then we have hydrological resource and hydrological risk, crucial, and crucially related to the last topic, the climate change mitigation and resilience. So the mitigation part deals with greenhouse gas emissions from reservoirs and how to manage, how to estimate and assess these emissions, if any, and the resilience of the project to climate change. And that has a big impact in the business, in the management of water, and in the operating rules of a project. You know, if we'll have more precipitation in one region, will the project be ready for that? If we have less water in the next 30 years, how will the project manage that? If the water has competing uses for example, irrigation. So this is also a matter that needs to be addressed. So you see, it's a broad, all-encompassing approach, all the 12 topics. Each topic obviously has a number of requirements, many. So if you have, for you to have an idea, you have about, for each stage, we have around 250 requirements, minimum requirements to meet the standard criteria. So it's not an easy task. Again, this, as Mariana said, you know, a poorly planned standard can have a negative impact. We're not free from that type of judgment, but it's definitely not an easy standard. As it should not be, should drive improvement. But with this, developers can improve the project sustainability. And by doing that, communities are more engaged, ecosystems are protected, okay? Civil society gains trust. And with that, there is also lower risk for investors because they understand what's that project, they understand the risk. If there's lower risk, there's more investments in more sustainable projects, whether there are new projects, whether there are refurbishments and improvements of existing projects, whether it's to making better decisions around new projects. So this is what the standard can be useful for, bringing this positive impact. Okay, so we've touched on the hydropower potential, pros and cons. We've touched upon standards and our standard. Now, what do we do, and how can we turn all this dialogue, all this talk into practice? Our work at the Alliance, we have the certification system using this standard, but we also build capacity through donor programs with SECO that you know, World Bank or NORAD, where we work with governments, with companies, with NGOs, civil society in specific countries to drive the knowledge around the standard. We have a global training academy to train professionals around the world, and we work on policy and partnerships to make this standard not just a nice to have, but also to embed it in, financial mechanisms and regulations and incentives from governments, for example. Civil society will look into a little bit of that. In fact, we'll look into the 4 things that we have here, and we'll show you some case studies. So let's go for the next stage of the presentation. Number 1, certifications. What does that entail? First, an assessment. So it's an independent assessment. An accredited assessor basically audits your project. So an accredited assessor carries a standard document and the requirements, goes to a project and checks if it meets the criteria, okay, and produces a report that you can all have a template of. After doing this exercise, the report must be published if you want to get certified. And for 2 months, the results and the report is open to all stakeholders. In fact, you can go to our website and see which projects are there open to consultation now. And you can read through the whole report, you can make comments, and the accredited assessor will have to respond to those comments and change the report if need be, or not change and justify why they're not changing. For quality control, the report after the transparency, the public consultation phase is submitted to us, to the Alliance, And then we, after verifying that the procedures are correct, we issue and award a certification, and a project can get certified and get the stamp of certification. So it can either get certified, which is meeting the minimum requirements, and if it goes beyond, there is a, you know, an incentive to go beyond with the silver and gold levels of certification that are dependent on the percentage of advanced requirements that are defined in the standard. So this is the process for certification. The biggest, you know, the most interesting part is the assessment. This is done by gathering evidence, by doing site inspection, by interviewing stakeholders. So it's it's all based on evidence. It's a very hands-on work that then goes to a report. So we'll see a little bit of that in the next slide with the case studies. Okay, this is where we certify projects. So I remind you that this is a new standard. So we started last year certifying projects, but the point is we're certifying projects everywhere around the world, you know, from Canada to New Zealand to Nepal, Tajikistan, Brazil, and there's a bunch of projects already planned. So the countries you don't see with the green stamp, they're planned. They're either doing an assessment now, or they will start doing an assessment soon, or they're very close to get certified. So there you go. It's the current status. Okay, so that's the certifications. Again, we'll see a little bit more in the case studies, but feel free to ask questions later. Second part of our work, capacity building. These are the countries we're working with. So in each of these countries, and you see Indonesia there with the support of SECO, we work with government agencies, we work with civil society, we work with companies, and we train everybody to make sure that everybody understands what the standard is. So basically we have aligned expectations, and we have a common dialogue, a common language to speak about hydropower and about sustainable hydropower, and what is this thing about sustainability in hydropower, and what does this, you know, look like? It's a bit of, you know, training sessions in classrooms, conferences with high-level politicians or, you know, media, but also hands-on, going to the projects and interviewing communities and showcasing and demonstrating how this work is done. So it's a mix of theory and a mix of practical work. And that's exactly what using the standard is a mix of theory, of understanding the requirements, but also a mix of practical work, taking those requirements to the field and see how they are applied in these projects, and how are the communities affected, how is ecosystems protected, etc. Okay. So let's look at the case study now that we've seen certifications and capacity building. Tajikistan, it's an interesting project, an interesting story of continuous improvement. This project, SEPSOR, they are now a gold certified project, but they didn't start like this. And that's the interesting part. So it started with a program of capacity building where we involved the companies, we involved the government, and we did training. We introduced the standard, talked about the details, talked about the topics, talked about the requirements, explained how to use it. After that, we did a thing called a self-assessment. So that's going to the project with the team and do kind of a mock assessment where the team of the project is assessing itself with the support from the accredited assessors. And with that exercise, you can identify gaps. And in fact, gaps were identified, and then create action plans. What you see here is an example, and that table is actually 2 gaps that were identified in this project. So for you to have an idea, and this is as detailed as I'm going this in this presentation, but you get you know, an idea. So one gap is some social impacts have not been fully assessed, and as a consequence, insufficient baseline information has been collected, and no specific management or compensation plans have been developed for these impacts. Okay, so this is a gap. And then there's an action. What can the project do to address it? a detailed baseline study of the current traffic along the road between the weir and the powerhouse, a traffic management plan, and also ensure social monitoring, grievance mechanism, and social acceptance and social management budget are adequate to address all indirect and unforeseen impacts. You see, so it's very practical. And there's another gap, which is there has been only a cursory assessment of dam safety risks, only a generic assessment of road safety risks, and no assessment of the contribution of geohazards to dam and road safety risks. You see, so this does not pass a standard requirement. So what does the project need to do? Cover dam safety in final feasibility study, including risk from geohazards. Cover road safety, develop and implement adequate early warning, emergency preparedness, and response plans. So you see, it's very detailed, but this is very helpful. So after this self-assessment and action plan, so we did workshops with the teams to explain in detail how to address this. Then an official assessment was done after the project addressed these issues, and a team of independent assessors this time did it. And this is what assessment looks like. Go to site, speak to the project team, speak to the communities, do an inspection, a visual inspection of the site as well. So the official assessment looked like this. This is just a diagram that shows the final result. This is not the full report, obviously. And the first diagram had two gaps here in community impacts and infrastructure safety. So then they followed an action plan, and in the second assessment, they got a silver project. So they addressed those gaps. They made all these studies and management measures on social impacts and infrastructure safety. And they improved a lot, and they also improved other aspects of the standard. But they were not happy, and they still done another action plan to address best practice and advanced requirements, and then they achieved gold. So this is an interesting story. You don't have to meet gold. Again, meeting certification is already difficult for many projects, and that should be the aim. But there's still the incentive, and that's a nice story. In fact, I will share the YouTube links. They have a nice video showcasing all this work, and are happy to share it. The impact was huge. Tajikistan was on the news. This is our team with the Minister of Energy, that photo in the news as well. And now the minister wants to certify all projects in Tajikistan. And that's a huge contribution to better projects, better projects that better manage community, and even better selection of projects. Okay, so that's Tajikistan. Another case study. I'll continue so we finish on time and we have time for questions later on. In Indonesia, it's a long-term cooperation. So you see a few photos of us working here with Steko and Bapenas. Just an idea of what we've done. It started before 2017, but let's start in our timeline in 17, where we did training courses in Jakarta and did an assessment of Pelosika in Southeast Sulawesi. We did a post-assessment workshop similar to what we've done to Tajikistan. I remind you that at this stage there was no standard. The tools that we used were the Hydropower Sustainability Assessment Protocol. So it's a predecessor of the standard. It's the same, but we didn't have a certification system. So we still could not certify projects, but we could improve projects. And indeed, we did improve projects. And we continued training with the certified user training, sustainable finance course, and eventually an Indonesian national assessor team was created, and Bapenas was leading on that. And they did 6 self-assessments using the tools that we had, so the standard. And interestingly, it wasn't used only for hydropower projects, but even dams that were only for irrigation. The standard is only for hydropower, but it's so valuable that they even use it for irrigation dams. And if it helps, it helps. We cannot certify it, but we're glad to see that it's useful. In 2022, we did a certified user training and an assessment of another Indonesian project. Last year, we trained 2 accredited assessors from Indonesia and other countries. And finally, last year, we started assessing a second Indonesian project. So we are expecting to have some certified projects here soon. And around the world, We have projects showcasing good practice in Canada, a very good one. In Nepal, happening, I think 3, 4, 5 projects even getting certified in Nepal at several levels of certification. Brazil also happening, New Zealand, and you can see all these projects in our website. And I think the best advice I can give is go to our website, download the reports, read them, criticize them, see what projects have been doing, and that's part of our work. Also sharing that knowledge, sharing those good practices. See what, for example, Canada did to manage a difficult topic there, which is indigenous communities, and it's an interesting, really good example of how the communities there were not just engaged or involved, they also own the project. It's very interesting, the relationship there. In Brazil, also not an easy project, but they were able to put a big effort in environmental and social practices. So this is our best advice, since we cannot spend hours and hours today talking about that. Go there, read, and reach out to us later if you have questions. Okay. So we've talked about certifications, we talked about capacity building, we've seen some training from case studies. Now, to go deeper, we have a training academy. So this is where you can become a certified sustainability practitioner, either a certified user or accredited assessor. This is similar to internal auditor and lead auditor, if you are acquainted with the ISO terminology. So accredited assessor, you can work independently as an auditor and to assess projects to get certification. If you're a certified user, it makes sense if you work for a bank or if you work for a company that you're not thinking about acting as a consultant, but instead of preparing your own company, preparing your own project to get certified or to improve your best practices, then the certified user course is very useful. We have sustainability leadership courses for executives, so not only for the technical members of teams, but also for management. And this is important, that the message of sustainability doesn't come only bottom up, but also top down. So at a high level, we talk with CEOs, directors, and have a one-day training with them, explaining more on the business value of the standard. And then we have topic-specific courses like sustainable finances or sedimentation, or we pick up, for example, biodiversity and how to deal with it, and we cover that in detail. There's a link to our training academy as well. So feel free to reach out to us, and if you want to dig deeper in any of these details, either you want to become a professional accredited assessor, which you can, or a certified user, or explore other trainings, just go to our website, reach out to us, and we'll be happy to welcome you to the network. Okay, so finally, the policy part. This is important for us to kind of go back to the big picture. The standard is aligned with the World Group Sustainability Framework. Mentioned it before. This is important for some of financing reasons. It's an official UN Sustainable Development Goals action. In fact, if you go and search SDG action number 51503, you'll see that certifying projects is, by certifying your project, you're contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. We're an ISIL community member, I've mentioned before. This is important for the credibility of the standard. Our standard is a requirement for Climate Bonds Initiative. So if you want to issue climate bonds with the climate bond stamp, you have to meet our standards criteria. So a link to a financial mechanism. We're an expectation. We're actually in the technical criteria of the RE100 membership. So this is a corporate membership where in the technical criteria requires all its members, and you can see like well-known logos there, from Apple to Nike to Google, etc. If they want to be part of that group, and if their electricity source is hydropower, then it should be certified, it should be third-party assessed. And our standard is the standard that is referenced there. We are also featured in the Swiss Re's risk framework, so reinsurance of hydropower projects. We're an IHA membership expectation. This is big, because IHA is the largest industry aggregator and network of the world. Project, developers from China to US to Brazil to Europe to Indonesia, everybody's part of IHA. So if the expectation is to certify, then that's very important for the standard. And lastly, we are a labeling authority for IREX renewable certificates. So if projects want to sell the electricity, in not only sell the electricity, but on top of that, sell their hydropower as a renewable certificates, then if you meet our standard, you can do that as well. So you see, now it's making the standard also useful, and all of this adds value to the standard. So this can fit into that value added and relevance and also credibility of the standard. Okay, now let's start wrapping up and go for the questions. This is our mission, a world where all hydropower projects enable healthy ecosystems, prosperous communities, resilient infrastructure, and good governance. This is our biggest mission. But we have challenges and opportunities, and this is how where I'll stop. First, recognize the business value. This is a challenge, from corporate social responsibility to faster return on investment, access to money. Understanding that getting certified is possible. It's not easy, but it's not an impossible task. So tackling the issue. Align expectations. It's a challenge, but then an opportunity. Banks, governments, regulators, industry, civil society understands this, that what is the standard and what does it mean? Win trust of communities and civil societies and NGOs. And for that, transparency is key. That's a challenge, but also an opportunity. All of these are challenges and opportunities, two sides of the same coin. And meet the advanced requirements and show that hydropower benefits go beyond just electricity provision. So these are some of the challenges that exist for the standard, and we as a interested community, interested professionals in hydropower and climate change in renewables need to tackle together. Okay, Diane, I'm ready for the questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen now and
Great.
give you the floor to manage this now.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
João. Thank you for the very insightful presentation. It's a lot to take in because we're covering a broad range of aspects, but I think it was very clear, the presentation from you. And we have from the audience 75 questions. So
wow,
a lot of questions. I will pick just a few because we only have about half an hour-ish left for the discussion. But to summarize, most of the questions are related to three aspects. One is the standard itself and the quality assurance aspect. And then secondly, about the development of the hydropower sector in Indonesia specifically. And then the third topic raised by the questions is the technical side of hydropower. So let me start from the broad or the macro related question. First question is from Chayun Budiono. The question is, how can the 12 topics of the hydropower sustainability standard be integrated into policy measures? This is speaking from the Indonesian perspective, particularly to the existing delicate regulations for renewable energy implementation in Indonesia. So that's the question. Would you like to answer first?
Mm-hmm.
The next one.
Yes, okay, I can do that. It's a very good question, and sometimes it depends on the government and how the regulator and on the timing as well. But it's doable in several ways. I would say it's a big task to include a standard like this in regulations. Maybe very, very, very difficult, and maybe not even necessary. The regulations need to be imposed and need to be consider a number of aspects and not easy, but we can take it by steps. First, using the standard as a recommendation from a regulator, as a sign of commitment to sustainability, sign of good practice, and sign of transparency. So first, have it as a recommendation. I can create guidelines. Maybe that's the first, guidelines around the standard that can be very helpful to meet international requirements. That could be, improving it. So guidelines, recommendations, create incentives for companies to do it with perhaps recognition, recognizing that projects that follow the standard and meet these requirements have, for example, an advantage in accessing a certain number of speeding up on the queue of licensing, for example. If not meeting the licensing requirements, at least giving these projects some advantage. So there are several creative ways to include this that are maybe more efficient, maybe more realistic than thinking about embedding the standard as a regulation, making it mandatory. Maybe in the future it will be, but going step by step, first aligning, using it for guidance, creating incentives and recognitions could be a good way to embedding this standard in a more systematic way and linked to regulations. We are doing this in Colombia, for example, actually. Again, another SECO program. It's good to bring this international experience here. Colombia government, with their Ministry of Energy and Mines, is doing guidelines on sustainable hydropower development. And we're working with them in these new guidelines. And the new guidelines will include our standard requirements. We have long discussions, and the question mentioned 12 topics. And in one part of the discussion, we thought maybe we could use some of those topics, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the topics that were more relevant. But then we looked back, or they looked back and said, no, we actually want to include all the topics because it only makes sense if it makes more sense and it's more valuable if all these 12 topics are together. So we're in that stage now. First, we explored how many topics. Now we want to bundle it up, and now we want to create a methodology of incentives, recognition, etc., so that the companies will follow it. And later on, we'll see how that goes into regulations or not. So
Great.
That's I think I'll stop here.
Right. Thanks, Joel. All right. So this is actually a question from my side. So I hope the audience wouldn't mind. I just have one question, which I think would also be interesting for everyone. So we talked about the 12 standards under the under the Hydropower Sustainability Standard. To what extent is it applicable for smaller hydropower projects? Because in Indonesia, there's a lot of potential for micro hydro projects across the country. So I was wondering, to what extent is the standard applicable for such smaller projects?
Great question. The standard was designed to be applied in any project, big, small, pump storage, run of river, storage, conventional, etc. So it can totally, without any constraints, be applied in small projects. Obviously, small projects have less financial, back. It's not normal. Sometimes it's even project developed by communities with low budgets. So we do have, and doing a certification costs some money. You have to hire the auditors to go and assess it. Good things. Doing an assessment costs is cheaper for a small project because the auditors will spend less time. Sometimes it's just a warehouse with a power, a small powerhouse, not a big reservoir, sometimes not even a reservoir. So it's much cheaper to do an assessment, and the certification costs are 50% of the cost of a normal project. So below 10 megawatts, it's 50% of the cost of certification. So there are some incentives to do, and we would like actually to see more and more small projects being certified, because despite being small, they can have impacts, especially in fish passages. Even small projects can have, and especially fish passages and cumulative impacts. If you have several small projects and you don't look at others around you, then several projects that are small can create a big impact. The cumulative aspect. So we want to see more and more of that, and we hope the incentive of cheap, lower prices for that can see more small projects certified and demonstrate that they are good projects and they bring benefits. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question is from Septiono Kurniawan. The question is, how can adoption of good practices or best practices and compliance towards global standards, such as the Hydropower Sustainability Standard, increase the economic viability the long-term economic viability of hydropower projects, while at the same time minimizing the negative impacts towards the environment and the community.
Right. I think minimizing the impacts and the long-term viability, financial and economic, are tied. You know, if you don't manage well your environmental impacts, your social impacts, those costs will come later in the game. For example, even during construction, if you don't address during your planning stage, during the preparation of a project, if you don't address community engagement, if you don't address, then people will create, resistance against your project. And communities can be either your biggest ambassadors as a project developer, or they can be your biggest opponents. So that can have an impact. And we have seen case studies of projects that lost millions of dollars of delays because they couldn't work because communities were against them. And that's, it's part of the world, and that's a good thing, when I think when people have a voice and can say that. So it's very important from this perspective. There's other perspectives as well. If you don't deal well with your reservoir erosion, for example, over the long term, you have issues with sedimentation in your dam that will be very costly. If you don't take care of the shores of your reservoir, if you don't take care of the communities that, for example, farm in your reservoir area, you may have very severe sedimentation issues, which will change the water quality, may have an impact in the water quality, so will then have an impact in the fishermen and in the fish migration, which will have obviously wider economic impacts in the region. But it will also damage your turbines. Will have, instead of having turbine replacement in 15 years, you'll have to do it in 7 years. So that's also a matter that you need to consider. And another one, and I'll stop on the third one, is hydrological risk and climate resilience aspects. If you don't prepare your project for future climate scenarios in your region, you will be risking having a project with no water in the future, or you'll be risking having too much water for the infrastructure you have and you can't deal with it. So embedding flexibility in your structure, embedding, for example, in the US last year, a dam was raising their wall, and when they built it 30 or 40 years ago, the structure was ready to increase in the future, and now they're building it up to have more water storage because of the drought. This is in western US. So you see, preparing for the future, being adaptable, and addressing those climate risks is also part of why economically, financially, it's important to tackle these aspects early on.
Right. Thank you, Joel. I think it's interesting because in Indonesia, as far as I know, the bigger issues related to hydropower is sedimentation, erosion, and also flooding. So addressing, I think having the standard to look to, asking the right questions to help plan the project well is very important for not only for cost savings in the future in case things go wrong, but also just for the long-term economic and also environmental viability. Okay, next question. This is a little bit more detailed. The question comes from Hansen Tarigan. Are there special standards for protecting river watersheds? And how to protect water sources from upstream side so that the sustainability of the hydropower plant can be well maintained?
Oh, that's a great question. Our standard is designed to assess a project, so on a project by project basis. However, there are some requirements in the standard that look into how that project fits into the wider system. It can be on a watershed, for example. How does this standard meet the requirements of that watershed? So that's a way to look into it. Having said that, there is developments to make, and we are working. And I think this is a showcase of how we improve as well, and how we use our standard, not just to change our standard, but to work with other initiatives to improve the sector and the discussion around renewables and the measures around renewables and hydro together. So we're using our standard to develop an early stage, more systems level approach to hydropower, filtering, screening, and selection. So we're working with a number of organizations, and we're actually launching now a working group to address this exact topic. How can this standard help the watershed, the river basin assessment at the more systematic level? In fact, last year, WWF issued a report that refers to our standard as a bridge between project level and rivershed slash systems, energy systems level planning. So that's how we work. So we can share a little bit of that work as well. We can share that report from WWF, which is very informative and has a strong link to our standard and how our standard can actually contribute to a wider discussion. And that's where we like to be. So not a closed standard, but an open standard that could help not only one single project, but more as the systematic level as well.
Great, thank you, Joao. So Pak Hansen is actually from the Ministry of Energy, from the Directorate General of Renewable Energy. So yeah, I will try to put him in touch also with you in case he's interested to further develop standards-wise from the Indonesian perspective.
Nice.
All right.
Please do feel free to share my email. I would be happy to follow up on that.
Right. The next question from Komarudin Komar. Financing of hydropower projects is really big, and it is also in order to get large amounts of electricity. So looking at other renewable energy options such as solar PV and also bioenergy and so on, is it the right time to focus on hydropower now? So I guess hydropower vis-a-vis other renewable energy options.
Good question. I think you have to look at all options at the same time. Really, all renewable options mostly, obviously, at the same time. You know, we obviously have a hydropower standard, but we don't advocate that, you know, hydropower is the solution for everybody, for all projects, for all regions. You know, sometimes it's not, and that, in fact, sometimes using the standard will demonstrate, okay, these are just too many problems in this project. Let's see what other options we have. Maybe a solar plant with a smaller project or something different will be a better solution. So so in that sense, hydropower does not have to be the all solution for everybody everywhere, but it's good to have standards for that, to understand how good this is. It would be good to have standards for, and we actually looked into it. It's a longer conversation for other renewables as well, because, you know, sometimes having a solar PV farm to meet the electricity requirements, it's not sufficient, and it will eventually require a huge area of deforestation just to put solar panels, and that doesn't come without its costs and its environmental impacts as well. So I would say no technology is free of negative impacts, including hydro, including solar, including wind. So using a well-informed decision-making before selecting hydropower or any other electricity source is the way to go, I would say.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer. Okay, next question from Agung Kurnianto. One of the biggest challenges that Indonesia is facing in relation to hydropower is water management, water resource management, starting from the conflict of the usage of the water to sedimentation and so on, which would affect the performance of the hydropower plant itself. So those are some of the key issues that is faced by Indonesia at the moment. what is the experience from other countries in relation to those issues of concern?
I would say this is an issue in every country. Water management and competition for different water uses. It requires a lot of strategic planning in terms of water for irrigation, water for consumption, which is, we've seen in the US, again, it's an example because last year was very dry. There was a big impact in hydropower projects there. And then people have to make choices and regulators have to make choices. Will we use this water for electricity or for drinking or for irrigation? So it's always difficult. And this is again why wind and solar are important as well, to bring them into the mix. So a system doesn't rely solely on water. Some years are drier, some years are wetter, and projects need to be integrated, and having a mix of several electricity sources make your system more resilient. In some places we have different problems. For example, in Nepal, with the warming, there is more water from glacier. There's more glacier melt. There's more water coming down the rivers. So projects need to be ready for that. So there is a lot of water coming down, which is good to generate hydropower. It's also high level water, so it doesn't have a lot of impact or the same impact in fish, for example, in aquatic life, because it's very high up the hills. But it does have a safety impact, and glacial lakes outburst, floods can be a very difficult problem in water management as part of infrastructure safety. So there you go. There is not a one fits all solution. It depends. Sometimes you have more, sometimes you'll have less water. What is important here is to try the best you can to understand how resilient your project is. So analyze the climate scenarios in your region, understand the hydrological risk in the future. And that's the basic level of this discussion. And based on those hydrological risk studies, climate resilient studies, then you can see, okay, we'll have more water, we'll have less water in the future. So let's make a decision now so that in 10 years, in 15 years, we can make better choices for, water use. Or maybe now, if we see there will be a lot of water, there will be changes in 10 years, let's not make an irrigation plan here. Let's save this water for consumption, and let's choose another electricity source. So there's no easy answer, but the point is do good studies now of hydrological risk and climate resilience, so then you can address those matters in the future.
Thank you, Joao. The next question is coming from Stephanie Putri. She has two questions. The first one is, based on your assessment from 1 to 10, what is the score of the application of the hydropower sustainability standard in Indonesia? Ooh, that's a bit tough. And the second question is, as a developing country that is starting to enter the renewable energy development, what is your suggestion for the government as well as business players in order to have a strong starting foundation and improve the current scoring of hydropower sustainability in Indonesia?
I would say there's a 7 score.
Okay.
So it's because there is a lot of engagement. There's a lot of work, as you've seen from one of my slides. We've working together for a while now, so there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people knowing about hydropower. We have a lot of trained practitioners in the standard in Indonesia, and we want to see more. So 7 means there's still a lot of room to grow. Obviously, for projects to start getting certifications, it will be interesting. But there are already projects using the standard, which is already very good. Certification will come in the future. That's not the point. But it will be good to get some projects certified, demonstrate that. So once you certify your project, you can showcase your efforts. You can showcase your transparency. You can showcase that, yes, in Indonesia, you can do projects that are sustainable, that are, responsible, that communities are happy with, that generate profit and protect the environment. You can showcase, we have projects in other countries showcasing, creating and protecting new protected areas, new habitats as well. So make sure that the investments in hydropower projects don't stick to the turbines and the dam wall, but also go to the communities and environmental protection. This does a lot for the sector, does a lot for any infrastructure project, really, and hydropower projects have the potential to do that. So a 7 for Indonesia, but obviously room to grow easily, making sure that, considering that there's already such a strong base load of engagement, of understanding, and from our work, obviously, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen a lot of knowledge, a lot of technical skill. Engineers know what they're doing. That's easy. We've seen projects in several islands, and we've talked to engineers, geological, civil engineers. You know how to do dams. That's kind of easy for you. It's kind of showcasing the good practice around sustainability. That is the next step, and it's a good one for Indonesia, which will then attract more investment. Will attract, having that backup will be very important. I think international investment as well.
Great, thank you. Easy question, this one from Dwi Chahya. How much does it cost to participate in the academy, the training academy, and how long does the training last?
Okay, was a certified user course. If you come alone and you apply, it costs around $900 US dollars per person. But we do that for companies, and then we do a whole catering of training. It will be cheaper if, for example, sometimes we do open trainings and people can join with this cost. Sometimes we work with a company and go to that company and train, and it's much cheaper, obviously. If you want to do an accredited assessor course, it's more expensive because after that you can work and sell your services, and it's more around 3,500 US dollars, more or less, a little bit more than that, but more on that range. So that's a more strict training with where we check the background. You need a CV. You need a number of prerequisites. The next accredited assessor training will be held in Lisbon, actually, in April. We can share the next training courses. We actually have a list of the next training courses in our training website as well, which we can share.
Right. And do I understand correctly that the Swiss government, SECO, is also providing support to participate in a training, or is that something else?
No, it's true. We have done several trainings in Indonesia supported by SECO, and in that sense, it's already fully financially backed, so you wouldn't have to pay it. You have to be invited. I'm not sure, and I need to check with our colleagues what we have in the agenda for this year in Indonesia with SECO. But we've done it before with SECO support, yes.
Okay. Good. Next question from Fadlil Alfani. How does the efficiency of hydropower plants compare to other renewable energy sources? And what are some key factors influencing the efficiency of hydropower generation? So this is a tiny bit similar to the other one, to the previous question.
Yeah, the efficiency. Well, it's in principle, it's much more efficient. The factor of efficiency can go up to 90% or so. So it basically some projects can run all day, all night long. In some hydropower projects, for example, that Girau project, the one that was certified in Brazil, it's a run of river, which is like 1,500 or 2,000 megawatts. And it's a run of river, so it's always running. It's almost 100%. You can't have that in wind or solar, obviously, because it's only when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. So the factor potential is much higher in hydropower, especially in reservoir hydropower. If you have, obviously, there are some hydropower projects that are designed and operate as a backup, so they just come in when it's required. So in those, the factor is by design, by operating rules, lower, because it comes up only as a backup. For example, if you're exhausting all the other electricity sources, you just turn this one on and it will go up. So obviously the factor of efficiency is smaller, but it's compensated by the fact that you can put it online in seconds, as opposed to even a coal plant. You have to take a few minutes to turn it on, or a gas plant, which you have to keep it on all the time as a backup. So because you cannot turn it on in seconds, you have to wait hours or minutes. So hydro has that advantage as well.
Right. Thank you. And this will be our last question, because we are 5 minutes to the end of our webinar session. And the last question is from Anna Gita. Is the standard, the hydropower sustainability standard, only applied to projects or new projects? Can it be applied to existing running or already running hydropower plants?
Yes, it can be applied to running plants, to projects in construction, and to projects still in design for new projects. So yeah, all three. In fact, we have certified projects in preparation, in construction, and in operation already. The good thing about operations is projects can improve their operations, can improve their sustainability even after construction, and that's one of the most interesting things we've seen in the last few years. So yes, all three stages.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Joel, for the very interesting presentation. And also, I would like to thank the audience who have forwarded a total of 100 questions. So it's an enormous, tremendous interest in the topic. Unfortunately, we were not able to raise all the questions one by one. But to the audience, you can find out more about the standards as well as the work that is done by the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance through their website, Hydropower Sustainability Alliance, hs-alliance.org. And if I understand correctly, the topics, the 12 topics, or the 12 standard topics can be found out from your website, right? So the guidelines or the standards can be used to guide successful implementation of hydropower projects, from looking at it from various perspective, ESG perspective, and looking into it in detail. So once again, thank you so much, Joao, and also Mariana, for your tremendous support, your tremendous presentation today. I hope that it has been beneficial for all our audience, from the Ministry of Energy, from academia, from the public sector. And if you would like to get in touch, please feel free to contact the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. So once again, thank you. That's all from my side, and I hand over the floor to Mbak Endah for the final announcements, the winners of the quiz, and also the top 3 questions. Thank you.
Oke, thank you Bu Dian, thank you Joe. Oke, baik Sobat PPSDM KBTKE, banyak banget materi yang sudah kita dapatkan hari ini. Nah, ini ingin menginfokan bagi teman-teman yang ingin mendapatkan sertifikat, jangan lupa isi link evaluasi yang sudah saya share di chat, diisi segera karena akan ditutup hanya dalam beberapa menit lagi. Baik. Sekarang adalah saatnya pengumuman. Ada 2 nama pemenang kuis Hydropower yang sudah saya pegang, dan ada 3 nama pemenang lagi ya, Bu Dian?
Sudah ada di chat ya, Mbak ya?
Oke, siap. Nah, kalau untuk, ini ada musiknya mungkin. Oke, ada 3 deg-degan ya. Nah, kelima pemenang ini akan mendapatkan merchandise dan souvenir dari PPSDM KBTKE dan GFI. Baik, 2 pemenang pertama yaitu atas nama Nadia Adilina, dan yang kedua adalah Asman. Ya, yang pertama Nadia Adilina dan yang kedua atas nama Asman.
Itu untuk pemenang
Kemudian
kuis ya, kuis Hydropower.
Ya, pemenang kuis Hydropower. Kemudian ada 3 nama pemenang dengan pertanyaan terbaik, yaitu pertama Cayun Budiono, kedua Septiono Kurniawan, dan ketiga Hansen Tarigan. Nah, saya ulangi lagi, pertama Cayun Budiono, kedua Septiono Kurniawan, dan ketiga Hansen Tarigan. Semua pemenang yang saya umumkan barusan boleh langsung kontak di IG-nya PPSDM KBTKE untuk sistem pengiriman hadiah. Baik, terima kasih. Selamat kepada para pemenang. Pemenang akan kami hubungi. Jangan lupa DM di Instagram kami. Tidak lupa juga saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Budian selaku moderator dan juga kepada Jo selaku narasumber. Baik Sobat Energi, demikianlah webinar PPSDM KBTKE. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Kepala PPSDM KBTKE, para direktur, Kepala Balai, pejabat pimpinan tinggi Pratama di lingkungan Kementerian SDM, para narasumber dan moderator, serta kepada JFA Consulting Group yang sudah berpartisipasi pada webinar kali ini dan membuat sukses juga webinar kali ini. Kepada peserta webinar yang hadir dan memberikan webinar hari ini, mohon maaf apabila ada kekurangan dalam penyelenggaraan. Semoga hari ini memberikan manfaat yang banyak untuk para peserta sekalian. Juga jangan lupa nantikan webinar PPSDM KBTKE selanjutnya. Infonya ada di sosial media PPSDM KBTKE. Sekian dan terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi Om. Selamat sore. Sampai jumpa lagi.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you,
Terima
Thank you
kasih,
so
Budian.
much. Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Budian. Jo.
Makasih, Pak Zainul.
Ya, sama-sama.
Terima kasih.
Ya, thank you, Jo.
Great accent, Joel.
Terima kasih.
No accent, actually. Great Indonesian.
I need to learn a little bit more.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Dunia terus berubah dan juga beriringan dengan semua kebutuhan di dalamnya. Di dalam kehidupan manusia sehari-hari, sumber energi menjadikan hal yang utama bagi keberlangsungan hidup manusia hingga diperlukannya sumber energi terbarukan. PPSDM KEBTKE hadir untuk memenuhi semua tantangan-tantangan yang ada di masa sekarang ini. Di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru dan terbarukan, serta konservasinya agar bidang KEBTKE dapat dikelola secara baik. Mengelola sumber daya manusia di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru terbarukan menjadi fokus utama bagi PPSDM KEBTKE untuk menjadikannya SDM yang berkompeten, profesional, berdaya saing, dan juga bermoral dalam lingkungan global di bidang ketenaga listrikan atau energi baru terbarukan dan konservasi energi. Dengan program-program unggulan yang diterapkan PPSDM KEBTKE dan juga didukung oleh para pegawai yang profesional dan berdedikasi tinggi. Demi melengkapi kesempurnaan pembentukan sumber daya manusia di bidang ketenaga listrikan, energi baru dan terbarukan. Demi menciptakan dan membentuk SDM yang kompeten, profesional, dan berdaya saing tinggi. PPSDM KEBTKE memfasilitasi seluruh peserta didik dengan sarana dan prasarana yang sudah memiliki standar ISO. Laboratorium dan workshop menjadi fokus sarana dan prasarana di wilayah Pusdikat KEBTKE.
PPSDM KEBTKE, Kementerian Energi dan Sumber Daya Mineral, telah bertransformasi menjadi sebuah lembaga pengembangan SDM di bidang ketenagalistrikan dan EBTKE yang unggul dan selalu menjaga kualitas layanannya. PPSDM KEBTKE mendukung target nasional Net Zero Emission 2060 melalui transisi energi yang harus diwujudkan oleh semua pihak untuk mengurangi dampak perubahan iklim bagi kehidupan masyarakat. Selain itu, Indonesia memiliki energi baru terbarukan dengan potensi yang tinggi, mulai dari matahari, hidro atau air, angin, bioenergi, panas bumi, serta lautan. Hal inilah yang membuat kami semakin matang dan siap melayani Anda. Kami didukung oleh para fasilitator yang berkompeten dan fasilitas yang lengkap sesuai dengan kebutuhan pelatihan, sertifikasi, bimbingan teknis, dan layanan penunjang lainnya. Pelatihan dan sertifikasi dilaksanakan dengan layanan yang prima. Bergabunglah bersama PPSDM KEBT-KE.
Program diklat di dalamnya dibagi menjadi 4 kelompok besar, yaitu bidang ketenagalistrikan, energi baru terbarukan, konservasi energi, serta manajemen. Bidang ketenagalistrikan terdapat beberapa diklat unggulan yang mencakup diklat teknis inspektur ketenagalistrikan, diklat teknis perencanaan ketenagalistrikan, diklat teknis perizinan ketenagalistrikan, diklat teknis uji layak instalasi listrik, diklat teknis perhitungan tarif listrik, diklat teknis pengembangan listrik perdesaan, diklat teknis pengelolaan dan pemantauan lingkungan bidang ketenagalistrikan, dan diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTMH. Di bidang energi baru terbarukan, dikembangkan beberapa diklat teknis, di antaranya diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTS, diklat teknis pengelolaan PLTB, diklat teknis pengelolaan biogas, serta diklat teknis lelang wilayah kerja pertambangan panas bumi. Sementara untuk bidang konservasi energi, diikuti diklat teknis kiat-kiat konservasi energi, diklat teknis audit energi, diklat teknis manajer energi, diklat teknis penghematan energi dan air, diklat teknis adaptasi dan mitigasi gas rumah kaca, dan diklat teknis perencanaan energi. Dengan itu semua, saat ini, PPSDM KEBT-KE mempersiapkan sebuah wilayah yang akan dijadikan sebuah kampus besar diklat tersendiri di daerah Cisarua, Jawa Barat, yang akan didirikannya sebuah fasilitas lengkap untuk memenuhi kebutuhan para pengajar dan peserta didik. Kampus Desa Kuta dan Kampus Desa Cisarua merupakan sebuah bentuk keseriusan PPSDM KEBT-KE untuk terus menciptakan sumber daya manusia yang berkompeten, profesional, dan berdaya saing tinggi di setiap bidangnya.
Baik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hari ini saya mengunjungi beberapa fasilitas PPSDM, khususnya yang ada di Satker PPSDM KEBT-KE yang berada di Cisarua dan di Megamendung. Kita melihat nih di belakang kita, ini beberapa fasilitas yang harusnya nanti muncul di sini, beberapa pelatihan-pelatihan yang kita bisa manfaatkan berdasarkan lokasi yang ada di sekitar sini. Jadi kita berharap kita semuanya bisa memanfaatkan, terutama terkait dengan pelayanan untuk masyarakat. Saya sangat mendukung pengembangan PPSDM KEBT-KE untuk memanfaatkan aset-aset yang ada guna perkembangan institusi ini supaya lebih maju lagi ke depannya. Terima kasih. Jaya selalu PPSDM KEBT-KE.
Pengembangan sumber daya manusia adalah proses pelatihan pengetahuan dan sertifikasi sumber daya manusia. Maka dari itu, PPSDM KE-BTKE hadir dalam sebuah lembaga yang memfasilitasi sumber daya manusia yang baik. Kami siap menciptakan sumber daya manusia yang cepat, cermat, dan produktif.